Welcome to the Explainer. Okay, we've got a massive job ahead of us today. We are untangling a really chaotic, rapidly unfolding web of geopolitical events happening across multiple fronts. When you look at the news right now, it can honestly seem like this dizzying blur of military action, diplomatic friction, and political theater. But we're going to break all of it down and cut straight through the noise so you can see exactly how all these pieces fit together.
So, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap. First, strikes and retaliation. Second, the nuclear deal status. Third, regional tensions and blockades. And finally, clashes in Washington.
All right, part one, strikes and retaliation, the immediate kinetic conflict.
Let's walk through the actual timeline of escalation here, because things moved incredibly fast. These are the explosive military actions that just took place and set off alarm bells globally. On day one, an already fragile ceasefire in the region was severely tested. And I mean, it escalated overnight. By nightfall, Iran literally fired missiles and drones directly at Kuwait, hitting the country's airport. Then, in immediate response to that direct aggression, by day two, U.S. forces launched a brand new wave of overnight self-defense strikes against Iran. This rapid-fire back and forth is the volatile core of this entire crisis.
Let's move to part two and see how this builds. The nuclear deal status, negotiations amidst chaos.
Now, right beneath the surface of all those immediate military strikes is an incredibly complex layer of diplomatic friction. We are looking at the reality of trying to conduct high-stakes negotiations amidst absolute chaos. To really understand the tension here, you have to look at the baseline. For a long time, Iran has maintained one official narrative regarding its nuclear program. They insist that it is for civilian purposes only. That is their stated position to the global community.
But what's really interesting here is the stark contrast to that claim. The world's leading nuclear watchdog, the IAEA, has just issued a serious warning because Iran is currently enriching uranium up to 60%. To put that into perspective, that is a level considered near bomb grade. So you've got this massive, heavily disputed gap between Iran's claim of purely civilian use and this very real, highly enriched inventory sitting right there.
Yet, crazily enough, despite the missiles flying everywhere and the IAEA warnings, diplomatic channels are reportedly still active. President Trump has actually stated that Iran has not left the negotiating table. In fact, he suggested a deal could come together as soon as this weekend. According to the president, Iran has agreed to his definitive red line. If they sign the agreement, they are agreeing that they will not have a nuclear weapon.
So, what about that highly enriched material that currently exists? When addressing this specific issue, what's being referred to as the nuclear dust, President Trump was absolutely definitive on how it would be handled under a potential agreement. He said, and I quote, "We will go in with them, we will get it, and we will destroy it." He affirmed that it would literally be destroyed today under this new framework.
Let's zoom out a bit for part three, regional tensions and blockades, collateral damage.
You see, a conflict of this scale doesn't just happen in a vacuum. A massive point of collateral leverage right now is the Strait of Hormuz, a vital global waterway that currently remains closed. But Secretary of State Marco Rubio told lawmakers that keeping this strait shut is actually backfiring on Iran. He stated, "This blockade is keeping them from hundreds of millions of dollars a day in revenue. That is a staggering daily financial toll that directly impacts their economy."
And the regional complications just keep compounding. The wider peace talks are being heavily challenged by Israel's increased fighting in Lebanon. President Trump expressed real frustration with Israel over these actions, noting that it threatens a fragile ceasefire in the region. This whole dynamic actually led to a very contentious phone call between the White House and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Monday.
However, following that contentious call, President Trump publicly downplayed those tensions. He drew a pretty sharp contrast, stating that Bibi Netanyahu has been, for me, a great partner, while acknowledging that for other people, not so good. But he firmly emphasized that for him personally, Netanyahu has been very good to work with.
So the crucial point is how this hits home. Part 4. Clashes in Washington. Domestic political fallout.
This international crisis has triggered intense domestic fallout. Just how intense? Well, during a recent, extremely high-stakes hearing on global security, House Democrats and Secretary of State Marco Rubio ended up arguing about footwear. Yeah, a representative accused Rubio of wearing shoes the president bought him that were too big. Rubio's exasperated response captured the completely chaotic mood perfectly. He said, "We're talking about shoes. Are you guys kidding me? I mean, is this the Foreign Affairs Committee or is this like a circus?"
And this brilliantly illustrates the legislative reality right now. We are watching lawmakers navigate a highly divided Congress while actively trying to manage a global crisis. On Wednesday, 4 House Republicans actually joined Democrats to pass the Iran War Powers Resolution, a move specifically intended to rebuke the president's war authority. It passed the House and heads to the Senate, but the political reality is that even if it passes the Senate, it faces a near-certain presidential veto, as will any other effort to curtail his authority at the White House.
Wow, we have covered a lot of ground today. We traced the explosive military strikes, the high-stakes and chaotic nuclear negotiations, the massive financial toll of regional blockades, and the bitter infighting on Capitol Hill. It's a deeply interconnected web. Which leaves us with this final provocative question. How will domestic political gridlock impact the U.S.'s ability to navigate this fragile multi-front conflict? When military strategy and delicate diplomacy get tangled up in deeply divided domestic politics, every single move has massive consequences. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Definitely keep this framework in mind as you watch these events continue to unfold.